Hall of Fame golfer Tom Weiskopf recently passed away, but left us a great legacy as a player, a TV commentator, and later on a golf course designer. Now, Tom won 16 times on the PGA Tour, including one major, the 1973 British Open. His golf course designs featured great playability for all levels of golfer, and always included one drivable par 4. So right after this, let's take a look at Tom's swing and see what we can learn from it. Now, there's not a lot of good footage out there of Tom Weiskopf, but he was known as a great ball striker. He was a fairly powerful player, hit the ball very high, and generally favored a draw. It was this power and height that led him to 4 second-place finishes at the Masters. Now, Tom was a very tall guy in an era where tall professional golfers just really didn't exist, just weren't very common. They would encourage you to go play other sports back in the 70s and 80s if you thought you were going to be tall. The prototypical golfer would be like a Hogan or even a Jack Nicklaus, who were more like 5'9" or 5'10". Weiskopf was 6'4". Now, Tom came from an era of more of a classical swing. Here we've got one lined up, and we can take a look at a few features from this angle. I've drawn a line behind the rear end, and you can see 6'4", he's standing over the ball pretty tall, and a few interesting features of his golf swing. You can see he takes the club back to the inside, which was fairly common back in those days. You see how inside that club has swung, but then he would lift the arms into a more upright position, and the club would get across the line to the right, kind of like Bobby Jones. Now he'll stay on this more upright plane all the way to the end of the swing, as again what was more fashionable back in those days, to swing a little more upright. You'll see halfway down he's nicely in the slot just below the shoulder, so he's not going to brush down with the right forearm here into a very, very shallow position, but a little more on the upright with a little more vertical. Now at impact, you see he's lost just a little bit of the spine angle as his hips are starting to push a little bit into right center field, but it's so minimal. He still exits reasonably left with the club shaft coming out below the left shoulder, parallel to the shoulder line. And you can see a very small gap has opened up between the red line and the rear end. But this really helped him swing a little bit into out and favor a draw, although he could play a fade too if needed be. He finished very high, everything facing the target, club shaft touching the base of the neck at the collar. Here's another good look at Weiskopf's swing from the face-on view. You'll see at address he doesn't have his feet super wide, but both feet are flared out about 15 or 20 degrees. Now, the classic swing of this era featured a left knee that would flex towards the middle of the stance, while the left ankle would kind of roll in and definitely had the heel lifting off the ground, unweighting that foot and really loading most of the body's weight into a straight right leg at the top of the swing. Now, one beautiful thing you see about Weiskopf's swing from this angle is just the width that he would get. Look how many inches that club shaft is off the shoulder. It's a great windup, but that width would really help him get a lot of height and distance. Now look at that leg drive. That's a large lateral shift while starting to flex in the right knee and unwind the torso. This was another hallmark of the classic swing, a very aggressive lateral shift to the target. But this is some great footwork here. You can see how the weight has arrived on the outside of the left heel, and the right foot has rolled inward, exposing the spikes to the people behind the tee, while the heel is slightly in front of the big toe. This really sets up a great pivot, encourages the rump to stay back and the torso to open up. And probably the most notable thing you'd see about his swing is this high finish. Look at the extension he gets as the arc stays very, very wide and intact into this high finish. Now, he didn't quite have the reverse C of a Nicklaus or a Johnny Miller of that era, but you still see some of that component here. Just a beautiful classic swing. Now, Weiskopf was also quite an astute finesse player. Pretty good with his wedges, which was not common for a powerful golfer who was also tall. Watch here as he knocks a wedge shot right near the hole at Troon. I think the closest thing to the modern day version of his swing would be Scotty Scheffler, a taller golfer with a more upright style and kind of more of a classic style. Now, Weiskopf probably would have won a lot more tournaments had he been an outstanding putter. He really was kind of like Hogan in that he hit a lot of fairways and greens and had a pretty repeatable golf swing, but just simply didn't hole as many putts as some other guys out on tour. That's why I think you'll see Scheffler end up with maybe a slightly better career than Weiskopf, because I think he's just a little better putter. But there's no question that Tom Weiskopf was a great ball striker. He could play all shots. He could work the ball, play it low, play it high. Was good with the wedges, and played a beautiful game from tee to green. So let's all raise a toast to Tom Weiskopf, knowing that in heaven all the fairways are lush and green. Hey, thanks so much for watching. I'm Steve, and as usual, I'll either see you in the next video or I'll see you longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.